Thank you, David, and thank you very much all for inviting me here this morning. Hey, look, the very first thing I want to do is actually just thank Kia. Kia's kind of thanked all of us for being here, but I want to personally thank Kia. I think they do a fantastic job. They serve an amazing role within New Zealand business, one that we need. A friend recently said to me when I said I'm speaking here this morning, they said, "Oh yeah, isn't Kia just kind of that cheerleading kind of organisation for New Zealand business?" And I explained they do far more than that. But actually, I don't mind the kind of the title of cheerleader for New Zealand business either, actually. I think it's a bloody important role. We all need a cheerleader. We all need a rack up from time to time. I certainly do. So I just want us, first of all, to thank Stephen, Sue, Stephen and the complete team at Kia. Look, this first slide of mine perhaps ought to be the very last slide of the day. It's a call to arms, really, by General Patton, and I think it's particularly relevant not only in war, I think it's relevant in business as well. A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week. And the reason I say this is because post 42 below, we've invested in some New Zealand businesses, and we see a lot of businesses, and I see a lot of fantastic, talented people coming to me with their business plan and asking for advice, which I'm happy to give. However, you know, at the end of the day, really the most important advice I can possibly give them is get your fundamentals right. If they're right, then just start. Look, I don't know if your business plan is perfect or not, and I suspect you don't know either. A perfect business plan doesn't actually exist. In fact, as soon as you've written it, it's kind of almost obsolete. It's kind of really, business is really like one of those kind of missiles that you have to direct every single day to keep finding its target. So my first bit of advice is kind of like that Nike saying, you know, just do it, just start. My own kind of little naive example of this was at 42 below when I kind of started, conceived the idea, did a little margin tree, worked out how much I should be able to make per bottle, came up with a sum of $8 per bottle, and I thought, yeah, this is not a bad business, I like it. Got into it, started ordering my bottles and all that kind of stuff. And then a few weeks later, I found out about this thing called excise tax, which came as a complete surprise. Figured out how much I had to pay per bottle, and it came to the sum of $8. Realised at that point I was making no money, but I'd committed. I was committed. I'd got the family checkbook out and already spent a huge amount of money on dry goods. So I had to find a way to make it work. And I'm not saying you should kind of go off and blunder around and make silly mistakes like I did then, but there is something to be said for just starting and getting on with it, and you'll figure out how to overcome some of these challenges as you go. I think if you try and second guess every second challenge that you're going to face in front of you, one, is going to become daunting, over daunting perhaps for you, and two, you know, you'll figure it out as you go. Sounds kind of naive and kind of maverick, but more important than kind of you know, trying to plan every configuration is getting started. I saw Rob Fyth yesterday, and he recently spoke to a chap, Jeff Bezos from Amazon, and it was amazing, his story. From the late 90s they started selling books, as we all know, but now Amazon is an entirely different company. They're selling, you know, all sorts of stuff. In fact, books is only a small part of their revenue, and they're huge. So imagine if you had have tried to follow their business plan when they first wrote it, you know, several years ago. It's bloody hard. You need to adapt and take advantage of opportunities as they come along. So really this is my first point. If people ask for advice, I say, well, look, I don't know if your software business or your juice business or your furniture business is going to work, but tell me about your fundamentals. If they're good and you're a bloody good jockey, then get on with it and just get moving. The first one is it a growth category? Now, business is hard enough. And if you're not in a growth category, I think potentially too hard. So the first thing to look at is, are you going into an area that's growing? It seems kind of simple and common sense. What attracted us to Akoya is that fragrance in the home, rather than just personal fragrance, is now a huge growth category worldwide. So we figured out, hey, if we can carve out a percent that's going to be, I don't know, let's say 2% of the world's multi-billion-dollar home fragrance market. That's going to grow, and it's going to grow quite rapidly. So it's bloody good having a tailwind. So look for categories, first of all, with a tailwind. And I'll come back to this point because I think there's a lot of categories in New Zealand at present that are about to have a really strong tailwind. The second point is, really about you and your connection to that business. Business is bloody hard. It's part of, every kind of waking minute of every day. So you've got to ask yourself personally, do you know it? Do you know it intimately? Do you absolutely love it? Do you understand it? And do you live it? Because if you do all those things, you're going to understand where the category's going, you're going to understand intimately what your product needs to do, you're going to understand intimately your consumer. I think I was quite lucky at 42 Below because I drank a lot of cocktails and I knew the cocktail scene in Wellington pretty well. So I had a pretty good feel, I reckon, for where the world cocktail scene was going based on a lot of experience in bars in Wellington. So use those connections you have, your personal connections, and make sure you have plenty because it's going to need to kind of drive you when times get pretty tough. We invested, one of the first investments we made post 42 Below was in the Hyper Factory with Derek Hanley. And I'll be absolutely honest with you, after several years working with Derek, I realised I know very little about technology and especially technology in cell phones, and I didn't have a real close connection to it. And I'll be honest that we were bloody lucky that we had a really good jockey in Derek, and we had a very good, we had a lucky bounce with that business because of Derek. And I told myself after that experience, really, I got lucky there, and next time I go into a business, I should know it bloody well myself and have a real personal connection to it. That's, I think, a really important point. This is kind of an obvious one, and the best way to illustrate it is, I think, by recounting a little story. A little while ago, a friend of mine said, "What is the most valuable skill or the most valuable asset to a business person?" And I thought about it for a little while, and I said, "Intelligence?" And he said, "No," which I was quite relieved about. And he said, "The most valuable skill in any business person is their ability to sell." And he said, you think about it, all the great chief execs, in fact, not only in business, you think of the great politicians, the great lecturers, so many categories, the great actors, the great musicians, are all fantastic salespeople. A couple of weeks later, I was on a flight from London to Los Angeles, and the actress Hilary Swank sat down beside me. And after I kind of got over her star power, I started listening in on her conversation. And as soon as she sat down, she was on her cell phone calling somebody, and she was hustling. She was selling. She was selling her to a new role in a movie. And she was bloody good at it. She was asking open questions. She was getting information about the script. And you could just hear her leading her and her credentials towards fulfilling the role that they were talking about. And she talked right until the hostess had to tell her to stop talking. And then as soon as we landed in LA, that phone went on again, and she started the same thing. Only this time it was for a different role. So it just reminded me that I think all successful people need to be selling, and they need to be bloody good at it. What we did at 42 Below, and we still do at Moa and Trilogy and Akoya, new businesses I'm involved in, every now and again we clean the whole office out and we send them out on the street cold calling, and we do sales calls, and we make it a competition. Put someone on the phone for the day, the receptionist, people and admin, everyone goes out on the streets. We team up and we have a competition to see who can sell the most. And it's a bloody good way of keeping sales kind of at the core of your culture, making sure people know how to sell, making sure people are kind of familiar with what's going on at the coalface, know the barriers and know how to overcome them. Be a very good salesperson. This is a little video, Franco, that we use for sales at 42 Below.
Alo? Salut! Sunt eu, un haiduc, și te rog, iubirea mea, primește fericirea. Alo? Alo? Sunt eu, Picasso, ți-am dat bip și sunt voinic, dar să știi, nu-ți cer nimic. Vrei să pleci, dar numai ei, numai ei, numai ei, chipul tău și dragostea din tei. Mi-amintesc
So just a reminder to always be selling. My next point, if we can go back to the PowerPoints, is about culture. And I think culture is an incredibly valuable asset. Look, I've been lucky enough to see this firsthand. When I joined Saatchi's Wellington, we're a pretty small agency run from Wellington, competing with New Zealand and perhaps at our best Australasian ad agencies. At some point, one of the key guys at Saatchi said, we're going to be the best ad agency in the world. And for me, as a young suit at the time, I thought that was just, kind of unachievable and an outrageous call. How are we going to compete with these huge agencies in Madison Avenue in London that have just mega budgets and do work for brands like Nike and Coke and stuff like this? Well, about a year or so later, we won an award internationally, and these same people used that to reinforce the fact that we were on our way to becoming one of the best agencies in the world. And we got a bit more success, and we used that again. And before long, we all believed it, including people like me. And the more we believed it, the more we wanted it, because it became a real potential achievement. And before long, Saatchi's was one of the best agencies in the world, which is actually where I met Ian Taylor, one of the speakers later on this afternoon. So it's really important that you've got everyone part of that culture and wanting it. Another little lesson I learned from another agency, DDB, was the freedoms: freedom from fear, freedom to succeed, and freedom from chaos, and freedom to fail. I think that's a really important freedom to have in your culture. People need to be able to come into work having had an idea in the shower that morning, knowing they can get it into the marketplace by that afternoon. And if it doesn't work, hey, that's all right. They'll come up with another idea tomorrow morning and give that a crack. In a lot of organisations I've seen, there's this real fear of failure. People are kind of trying to get to the corner office in the new kind of corporate car, and they're bloody worried that if they make a mistake, it's going to halt their progress. That's a really dangerous culture to have in an organisation. What you want is people trying things, coming up with new ideas and new ways of doing things. So you need those freedoms. What we try and do in the businesses we have now is we try and make sure everyone intimately understands the vision. They love the business, they know it, they know where we're going, they know what our world position needs to be. And then once you're clear and really confident your people understand that, then get out of the way and let them have a go and let them make mistakes on the way. Culture is a very, very important asset in any business. And probably the next one here is belief. You got to believe you can conquer the world. And it's really hard when there's kind of two of you in a garage in Wellington to believe that you can conquer the best bars in New York or Paris. Likewise, it's very hard when you're in a little kind of garage in the southern suburbs of Sydney to think that you can get your candle and body care brand into Harrods and Liberty and Bloomingdale's. But if you believe that from the start, like that Saatchi example, you'll start working towards it, and it will become real. You've got to believe. And if you have people that don't believe, they're a dangerous part of your culture, and you need to do something about it. Look, two little examples. One first at 42 Below. When we first started making a little bit of an impact in New Zealand, we won a taste award in the UK, and we did this ad, and we had a lineup of our brand versus a few others. And we said kind of quite soft, kind words about the other brands that didn't feature so well in the taste competition. We got taken to task by the Advertising Standards Complaints Board because Absolute Vodka complained that we didn't use the correct words when we spoke about their brand, because what the judges said was actually bloody harsh about Absolute, so we didn't use those words. We used some kinder words. Well, the Advertising Standards Authority ruled against us, and that was a real knock. And for a team of about 5, that gave us a bit of a bang. But we decided, a friend of mine said, hang on, we're not going to stop there. Let's do something about it. Let's do an apology. And I thought, what? We're not going to apologise? Surely that's just going to make matters worse. And he said, no, let's do an apology and let's put the actual words that the judges said. So we did this little press ad and had me standing in the corner looking like I'd been naughty. And it printed the actual words about 17 times, actually. And we sent that little note to the Herald. They ran it as about a half page for free for us because they enjoyed it so much. And so did a whole lot of newspapers, not only in New Zealand but around the world. And that was kind of the first little shot from David versus Goliath. And we actually, despite kind of the challenges, we actually won that first exchange. And it was a bloody important little exchange to win because it set the tone and the belief for our culture from those 5 little people sitting up in Ponsonby from those early days to believe that we could take on the big guys with no money and still win. This little example here was quite recent. At Moa Beer, we described because Moa Beer is a natural beer, we put active yeast in the bottle and it ferments naturally, so we don't use any artificial preservatives, and neither do we use any carbonation, so CO2 doesn't go into it, that's created naturally, in the same way that champagne is made. And we described that process on our website. Well, the French region that owns the term champagne sent us a long legal letter from their legal people saying we needed to remove the word champagne from our website. So we sent them back this postcard. On the front, it had a picture of the Rainbow Warrior. On the back, for those of you who can speak fluent Maori, it had a phrase which asked them to go away, only a little stronger than that. And it's important to do those things from time to time. Sets the tone for your culture. As yet, we haven't heard back from the people at Champagne. And look, the last one of my little fundamentals before I just speak about another particular topic is competitive advantage. Look, make sure you do have a competitive advantage and be really single-minded about it. We believe that a natural beer from Marlborough, New Zealand is a competitive advantage on the world stage. We believe that using natural bases in soy candles, and that's a unique piece of technology there, is a competitive advantage on the world stage. We believe a skincare from New Zealand doesn't have a skincare that's a global brand. We believe that our origin and our provenance and our ingredients from this part of the world do give us a competitive advantage. And likewise, from 42 below, from the 42nd parallel, one of the most cleanest, pure environments in the world is a competitive advantage. So make sure you have one and use it. So look, those are my fundamentals. I've got a few more slides and just going to kind of get into a little story, a little recent story of a couple of weeks ago. That's me and our US importer for Moa Beer at a ranch in Sonoma. And we had just arrived to meet a Whole Foods conference. And so at that ranch were all the general managers of the 18 different regions of Whole Foods US. And many of you all know the Whole Foods story. It's an amazing success story. They've currently got 250 stores across the US, and they're adding another 60 this year. So it's a growth business, and it's a great business for New Zealand food and beverage brands to be partnered with. Well, they have a few beers in their offering, and we wanted to be part of that offering. The reason we got invited, and we were the only beverage brand to be actually invited to their 2-day conference, the reason we got invited was because of our competitive advantage and the reason that we're from New Zealand, which for all those Whole Foods people who come from all over the US, from people from places like Chicago or Atlanta or Seattle, New Zealand is seen as a very pristine, green, perfect environment for making a natural beer. And that's really the reason that I got invited there. And that is a competitive advantage that I think Moa Beer obviously has, but I suspect many New Zealand businesses have. And if you think about our GDP, let's go through the big ones. Tourism, dairy, all horticulture, fish, wool, wine, even vodka, beer. They're all linked directly to our credentials as a country. And the big credential that we have, that so many countries don't have, is our green credentials. We are a pure natural environment. And we think that is a pure advantage. We think that is our competitive advantage for many of the businesses I'm involved in, and I suspect for many New Zealand businesses. And so there's a group of us, I'm going to give a plug now for Pure Advantage, that are part of a team that believe that we can grow and build a competitive advantage for far greater economic worth for New Zealand moving forward. And the reason we're doing this is not because, well, in my instances anyway, it's not because I kind of, like hugging trees or kind of want to cuddle a few polar bears. The reason we're doing this is because we think it will make New Zealand more money. And I think it's a really valuable position to have, and one we can exploit much more. and also protect as well and be careful in the way we use it. So that's what Pure Advantage is about, and I encourage you all to sign up and be part of the Pure Advantage website and see the updates we give. It's about getting the upside of the coming green boom. It's kind of like, New Zealand's got these credentials. There's a growth business happening across all sorts of categories, and we've got a competitive advantage that so many other countries don't have. So let's use it and let's protect it. And that's what we're about. Just want to say a little more on this aspect. Look, New Zealand has a whole lot of advantage. We are a very creative place. I think people like dealing with New Zealanders. We're trustworthy, resourceful. All those things are true. But so many other countries have those or can have those. You know what New Jersey or Mumbai or Shanghai don't have is pure credentials. They don't have the pure advantage that we have. And so kind of from my advertising days, I learned about this thing called the single-minded proposition, the SMP. Say one thing and say it bloody well and guard it at all costs. And I think that's true for business, and countries are like a business, so it's got to be true for a country as well. We've got to talk about our pure advantage as a country, and we've got to protect it and say it bloody well. So just on the protection, our stock price, our pure stock price worldwide has taken a few hits lately, particularly now with the internet. People can see into your backyard really easily, so we need to be careful about what we're doing here. Those are a few comments from the UK and WWF. And, as an exporter of pure products, I don't particularly like seeing stuff like that come up in the UK. In fact, Okoya, which is in Harrods and Liberty, Bloomingdale's, Harvey Nichols in the UK, was questioned on our origin from this part of the world because they'd seen an article in The Guardian. So it doesn't make it easy for New Zealand growth businesses when those types of things happen. There's just the website. And look out for our first kind of major white paper on this area, which is New Zealand's position in the green race, which I think is a really apt title because the green race is about to start. New Zealand, I reckon, is in pole position at the moment, but we want to make sure we actually use that to our advantage. And look, lastly, again, in summing up really, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk with you all. If you're here today thinking about starting a business, look, my advice is have a think about your fundamentals. If they're right, if you've got the passion for it, you think you are the right jockey and you've got the right jockeys around you, then just make a start and have some fun along the way. Thank you very much.